Hi, and welcome to my Assignment7 video, the one with meshes and graphic objects, that one. I have a lot to show you. This is the graphic objects for just color. Oh, it's not even close. And it takes me a little while to switch, so I'm just going to get through some of these. I'm not going to show you all of them, but I will talk you through my processes for creating them. So that was the color. This is the texture. Boom. See, that's it. Yep. So now we got two textured cubes running around. So yeah, these were pretty simple to package all together. Actually, the color one I didn't even make it. But essentially, these are all very similar classes. The texture, in this iteration, since there's only one texture, I have it passed in the constructor. In the meshes, it's a little bit different. As far as light goes, color light, instead of color, we have set material, and the material stored there. And then in set texture light, I still have the texture passed in, and then I also have set material, so that the material of the texture can be set directly. And then the renders are pretty self-explanatory. I'll actually go over them in the meshes because I feel like they're a little bit more complicated there. Let's look at some that I actually made. That'd be helpful. So this is color light. There it is. Some beautiful directional lights, and I have the cube has a spotlight on it, the rotating one. So as it goes around, the cube is lit in a very cube-like fashion. The last one is texture light. Boom, there it is. A few dim boxes. And there's a spotlight, and obviously they have directional light on them. Otherwise, they'd be completely dark. That's just the ambient light from the everything. That's a lot of things to say. Okay, so those are the basic graphics objects. Here are the meshes, and I will try to keep this going quickly. I'm not going to show you the color meshes because you gave us those, so it would be kind of stupid for me to just do them. Boom. So the meshes were also done very similarly to the other, to just the basic graphics objects. Here's the all the textures, and the doors on the other side. It's this wood. And a simple cube going around. For the where's my texture? A very similar thing where there's a set texture which sets the texture for all of the mesh numbers, and then an individual mesh number, as well as a array of texture pointers that holds each texture. And then when these are rendered, each mesh number is rendered with its mesh texture. All those are set as that happens. So let's do color light, texture light, color light. color light is done in a very similar way to a combination of all of the other graphic objects. There is a set material for each. There's a set material for everything, and then there's a set material for an individual mesh number, and then everything is rendered in the same way, where as each mesh is rendered, its mesh number or its mesh material is set to the or is sent to the shader on a per mesh basis. So that's that one going. Last one, because my further work isn't working, but I'll still talk through that one. Did I do this right? No, I did not. Yes. And so this one is again just done the same way as the color light, except there's an ability to set the texture on a per mesh basis, and then it's just all rendered the same way. There's my door. It's beautiful. As far as further work goes, I did try to implement this color texture class, and what I did with that is I passed in the two shaders that I wanted, a color shader and a texture shader. I stored those, and I kept a running list, or just a running list of which mesh numbers correspond to which shader. And then I have this function here, the set shader mesh, which takes a mesh number and a shader, and that just adds that mesh number to be rendered by that shader. I don't unfortunately have time to debug this completely right now. It's just rendering one of the meshes, but and it's also very fragile. Very little error checking, just kind of running willy-nilly. You could set as many meshes as your heart desires to each list of meshes to be rendered. So this is not by any means code I would use. I would need to refactor it incredibly, but this is then how it would render. It in the DX app, it's this right here. It sets the camera matrices to both the shaders, and then it just leaves the texture shader set to the context, so that when we get into the render, it starts with the textures. While there are still valid entries in text mesh, the list of meshes to be rendered by the texture shader, it renders those. When it runs out of valid ones, it just switches the context to the shader color and renders all of the meshes that are set to be rendered by the shader color, by the color shader. So that if I worked on it a little bit more, it probably would work. It would still be fragile. I wouldn't be proud of it. I wouldn't really. That was a lot of words. Essentially, it's still fragile. It would need to be refactored. But this is the way that I would go to attempt it, and I would try to get some of this cleaned up. But yeah, that is this assignment video, and have a nice weekend.